Well, yeah, thank you all, and I hope that I can probably tell you way more about coconuts than you ever thought, anyone would ever find interesting. But I've, about probably 10 years ago, I made this little tool for just punching a hole in coconuts, and it's just led me into researching and following the industry as this whole wave of popularity has come into it, which is the health benefits that was first discovered about the oil. Immediately after this started, the coconut water became, famous on the world stage. I guess since 2008, the financial crisis, coconut was all of a sudden this growth category that all these beverage industries just got ushered into, and thought we can spin this and make make something grow when everything else was shrinking. And I've had just a fantastic front row seat following the industry and learning how all these countries that have existing coconut industries are trying to keep up, and how many people would like to get involved with it that just really have no idea what they're doing. And basically there are so many products that we're all exposed to now that are quite often really rebranded traditional coconut products, and probably some overly processed things that weren't big sellers are now back on the menu. And it's gotten to the stage now where there's almost a coconut shortfall in the world. Thailand have sold so many of their drinking coconuts that they're trucking them in from Malaysia. Brazil, who had the only industry based on dwarf coconuts focusing on drinking, is now so short sold that they're clearing the Amazon to plant dwarf coconut varieties. They're buying coconut water from the Philippines and Indonesia that's was traditionally just a waste product from processing desiccated coconut and making coconut cream. Now all of a sudden all that water has got a market, and they're really at the time the groundswell began. There was no new technology to get it into the Tetra Pak, but they convinced the world that there was. So a lot of the products that you may have taken on board as coconut essence in a tin, which is I think they sell 14,000 cans in and around Cairns every week, distributed by Mungali. This is not coconut water. I wanted to offer everybody a taste of the real thing. I want to explain the sugar profile and how it's produced in the palm, so you can understand why there's a health message and how it doesn't actually get accomplished with the way that it's being processed. And I've got so many, I guess, different ways of presenting it. I should probably just start with some basics about the palm and the biology, and hope that you all help yourselves to these that are already all open. Wash down your dinner, mix them with beer. I don't think they go so well with wine. There's toilets out the back end that way. They're all elite varieties. I think you might notice from this one that it's pink throughout. These are, we have tremendous genetic resources just dotted around Cairns that were all brought here with high hopes, probably in the 70s and 80s, and because no industry emerged, I've kind of taken it upon myself to collect the best of the genetics, and I propagate a lot of dwarf varieties in nursery and sell them wholesale to other nurseries down south. So dwarf coconuts are being planted all over Queensland. Everybody wants this sort of drink station in their backyard that they can manage. And I guess it all sounds like a great idea, and then generally people go, oh, it's just all too hard, or it's it's not easy to get at, or it's too labour intensive, or we can't do it in Australia. But really there's just a couple of like coconut hacks and tricks that make it all very simple. And the health message is really, really strong. There are people that are reversing all kinds of neurodegenerative diseases through high-grade virgin coconut oil, low-grade copper oil being sold as virgin coconut oil doesn't help. It doesn't help when you're wanting to offer something as medicine, and everything about this plant is food and medicine. And a lot of the the Ayurvedic I guess intonations about coconut medicine haven't really come to the West. They've sent our Ayurveda to the West, largely based on dried herbs and oils. But in southern parts of India and Sri Lanka, where they live and breathe this tree, they're drinking from it. They're pulverizing the roots and mixing them with onions and doing all sorts of beautiful fresh chemistry with sophisticated polysaccharides, not broken down, boiled, reduced sugars. And that's really where the sort of benefits come from. I guess one of the sort of sequence of my talk is basically if I can take you through some of the tools and using them that make coconut easy, or I find it easy, compared to when I first came up here, learn how to climb a tree, but there was no way I was going to do it with a knife. And I just thought, well, I'll punch a hole in it and drink it. That was my starting point. But now I don't find dehusking a challenge anymore, and I've learnt that the geometry of the seed is really quite spectacular. They all have a flat side, and from this flat side they have two hulls. So you can say that was the original catamaran. So it will float around the ocean like this with these two hulls. This is a slightly larger section. It's actually got sevenfold symmetry. So you've got 2/7, 2/7, and 3/7. So the germ pore, I'll show you. What we do is, everything about it is just leverage. And you take off one of the hulls, then the other. You can see, I've done that wrong. There you go. It happens when you're talking. Right? But you can see that it's already started to germinate. That's actually the larger section. And you tend to take off the two from the flat spot, which is the line between the eyes. You take off that side, and you can see two eyes, and then you can be careful not to damage the growing shoot. This is probably one a little bit more advanced than that. You can see you can so this is a complete growing system with all the products that you're familiar with in Bunnings, like the coconut fibre that's rarely imported, and this is what I make a lot of now, is the coconut or cocoa peat, which is you could say the godfather of the whole hydroponics industry. And that's really what's going on in the world. The demand for indoor growing, the demand for all coconut products has gone like that. I've got a machine now that I can just throw these husks in by the armful, and it spits out a lovely mixture of the fibre and the pith. And they both have very interesting properties for propagating in. The reason why it underwrites hydroponics is because there's a very high potassium content, and there's a hormone, an auxin, which propels everything towards flowering. So you get higher yields just because you're working in this medium. Well, look, you don't plant them like this. A rat will dig them up and eat it because what's inside is delicious. This is a medicinal stage as well. Anyway, that's simply it with dehusking. Take off that side, and have a look at that side that it wants to sprout from. When you plant them, we put them the flat side down, point them towards the sun, and they'll germinate in our nursery either in what's called a feminine pattern or a masculine pattern. So that's a girl coconut because it's come out through that softest part of the husk. Also because the husk comes in at the bottom, which makes it much easier to peel off. And because the fronds are nice and loby. Those are the traits that we look for in seedling selection. This will be a much rounder fruit. These are girls, or predominantly girls, and you can see that shape. They're very flat on the bottom. The male tends to be like this. Regardless of which way it's facing, it's only interested in the light. It just goes straight to the light. The male just doesn't bear nearly as heavily, so the industries will weed them out of the nursery. And that's what we should be doing up in, this maniac at Cape Trib. No, there's basically on the flower, you've got your male flowers on the end, and these are the female flowers here. So you'd have to say that there's not many female flowers that are going to form into fruits. It's probably a male-dominated palm, or more boy than girl. So that's what we look for in the nursery. We look for ones that are just shooting up anywhere out of the husk, have a much narrower leaf, little points on the end, or a longer fruit. You end up with, you could say it's more of a globe shape, and it's actually a bit more work to rip the husk off those ones. There's still, there's a purpose for men in nature. It's not like they make bad coconuts. So it's just there might be maybe 60 or 80 per year on a palm, whereas on a female palm it can be 250, 400. It's a mother crop, and it's selected, for its motherhood. So, from my point of view in the nursery, I know that 2 sets of chromosomes come from the mother palm, 2 sets of chromosomes in the female flower, 1 set in the pollen. So it's quite easy for me to know that by the colour of these stems that these are actually coming up from a green parent, a green pollen parent, and it may have even been off a green mother palm. Quite often we get the dwarf traits like yellows and golds. Most of the dwarf traits are recessive, and so in the nursery we'll get ones that should all come up gold, and we get a few green ones amongst them, and we know that they haven't self-pollinated, they've cross-pollinated. And so we would sell that as a introgress hybrid, knowing that it still has a dwarf mother. It will still be precocious and early fruiting, but the father is unknown, and it might have a longer, lankier fruit or whatever. But just while I've got it here, so I don't distract myself, in the pollination, This was on one side of the palm, in the inflorescence on one side, this on the other. So as these male flowers open on one side of the palm, the female flower isn't receptive to be pollinated, but the female flower on the other side of the palm starts weeping a little bit of nectar just from these three little bracts at the bottom. And this is what attracts mostly ants, but the palm is full of geckos, ants, all kinds of bees and birds. And it's basically, there's a traffic from one side of the dwarf palm to the other. And that's why they're often true to type. They're often doubly sweet compared to a tall coconut. The tall coconuts, they all pollen first, and then the female flowers on the same palm will be receptive, but the pollen's all gone, so they need to be cross-pollinated. So the tall fruits can be delicious. They can pick up some sweetness from the seashore, the mineral regime that they're growing in, the salt air, but really the dwarf palm, if it self-pollinates, it will express this sugar gene twice. And some of these are Malay greens. They, at a very early stage, it's already like, it has a brix. Brix is a measurement of sweetness. So the brix of about 5.5 for tall coconuts, but the dwarfs are 7 and more. I've got one in my backyard, even in Spiwa, is up to 8, which is very, very sweet. Anyway, that's, I'll show you the measure of sweetness with the refractometer, which I use for all fruit juices. They'll put a little bit of that on, and it'll give a percentage, brix it's called. And this is just the water out of the nut when it's at a drinking stage. The water when it's say got to this stage, there's probably only a tiny little bit of water left in that. But once that starts doing its thing and this horstorium starts growing inside, this water starts getting a little bit sweet again. Normally it's down to 3 in a tall coconut, and that's what happens in the industry. They'll get water from tall coconuts with a brix of about 3, and they'll add fructose to bring it up to about 6 or 7, and say on the pack, no added sugar. You wonder why you're not getting the results, So once it's germinated, all of a sudden, it's, crikey, way back up to 8 again. That's, if you want to sip that, that would be delicious. And even eating this horstorium as it grows, this is, this is medicine for elderly people in Bangladesh. It's instant energy. It's instant energy. I've got this friend in Hawaii who sells the Cocotaps for me, and basically they don't spike their trees like they used to in Hawaii. They're all trying to look after them, and there's a whole new wave of young people who just want to drink the young coconut only. And he said, over here, young people like young nuts and old people like old nuts. And that's, the more you look into the medicinal history, the more sense it makes. Yeah. These ones are, most of the ones I brought tonight are, or dwarf crosses. But there's a lot more to taste, so we won't run out. I just, when we talk about young people into young nuts, this is another tool that's they call it a fid. Every fisherman knows what that is for splicing rope. It's on most fishing boats, and there's a clever guy who patented it as a coconut tool by putting a little handle on it. So that's the Brazilian coconut opener. And in Hawaii, they call it a popper topper because you pop the top off like this, and you go, there's your flat side again, which is means that the soft eye will be on that side. So you just put it down like that and turn it around, and very simply, not sure if somebody wants to drink that one, we can, yeah. Sorry, who? There you go. There you are.
So is this pink inside?
Well, yeah, I'm going to chop that one open that I've got there. So that's a very quick way to get into a coconut. That's what they do in Brazil. Yeah, that's in Whitworth. Every boat shop has it. Yeah, most people have it. No one's selling the Brazilian thing in Australia that I know of, because it won't go through a coconut that's any harder. Yes, sorry.
Do you have a fermented?
Pardon?
Do you have a fermented?
Yeah.
A whole of top, stand
Yeah.
it upright.
Yeah, that's what I started. Yeah, I started with this Cocotap, putting raisins in and making jungle juice when I was young. Yeah. Yeah. Then I realized, that it's health food. Anyway, these very young coconuts that young people are fascinated with aren't really ready to drink. They're very premature. The sugar isn't really finished, but what they really want it for. And this is just an easy way to do it. You turn it upside down and let it fall through the knife. And then you have quite soft flesh like that. And if anybody wants to get into those, they're all right. Well, feels like a game show. Look, there's something to take home. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, so the way we tell how old coconuts are for drinking is by the sound that they make. That one's quite a bit older and got hard shell. So there's no way that the fid would go through it. It would just, you'd flip the top off and you'd just bounce into the shell. You'd never open it. Yeah. So that's full of water. These are young pink ones. That's very watery. And there's acoustic instruments in Thailand that they just hold up to the coconut, and it will tell them with their variety how thick the jelly is inside. Like holding a acoustic device to it. But basically, when we're up in the tree harvesting, we go along tapping, and we know that's too young, and we know that bunch we take down. And when it's like this, that's really what my Cocotap is for. It's like it's been on the palm for about 10 months, where these have been on the palm for about probably 6 or 7 months. By now, the flesh is rubbery. It's the sweetness has peaked, and it's started to boil like a battery on a charger. And the fizziness, which the other lady had here earlier, is actually hydrogen that's released from the flesh back into the electrolyte. So what you have is very much like a fuel cell process going on the palm. It takes its 6 or 7 months, it forms this jelly layer, that becomes the electrical insulator, and the battery comes on to be finished, and I guess maximum sweetness with a little bit of hydrogen gas and other gases that are inside and quite fizzy. So I made this just to be able to go in anywhere look, the shell's just there, and that's, we'll punch a hole in anything, and you don't have to turn it upside down. You can still just hit it like that, but that's literally, the fastest way to open a coconut, and you don't have to have a straw. You just, it will pour out of. So, if somebody wants to try a fizzier one, there you go. It'll pour down your lap, so drink out of that side. Okay. Now, the other thing I'll do while I'm at it is what you can do with these coconuts that are fizzy or finished is you can use it to grow probiotics. So what we do along the lines of of fermenting in it, we just put a hole like that, and then this is like a liquid probiotic. We call it bio-bubble, but it's a whole broad spectrum of once you've killed off all your microbial life and you want to rebuild your guts, a liquid probiotic in a coconut, just like that. And we'll just leave that in there, and we can taste that later on. It doesn't take long to brew, but this is my airlock, so it's all for the microbiologists in the audience, There you are. So that's a probiotic tonic that will rebuild your guts after antibiotics. Now, I just probably should move on from all the palms and just show you quickly the other tool that I think is essential is this kind of a grater. To do this, I'll just need somebody to fill this with a bit of hot water out of the kitchen, if you don't mind, Alex. And so, in order to make cream, very simply, you do it into a bag made out of curtains, as many of you have seen, and it just makes it something that you can do inside, and it's not a messy thing anymore. Whoop. That's the blunt side of the knife. Yeah. Yeah. It's always harder when you're talking. But if you don't mind, Peter, would you just be able to hold the table, because it's going to get awkward. That's a casualty. I'll put that there for a sec. So we grate it into the coconut water, which has an enzyme content that will start drawing the oil or the cream out of the fibre. So any number of food processors won't do this nearly as well. I mean, we've got all this Thermomix culture, but really you need the fibre fine like this, and you need a little bit of heat, and you need the enzymes from the coconut water to get a really good result. Okay. That's mostly it. I just use the pointy end just to clean the tool a bit.
Where'd you get those tools from? The grinder thing?
They come from Sri Lanka and somebody sells them in Rusties. I have a few. I think I put them in Community Foods and the food co-op in Atherton. Right? But yeah, I use a little bit of hot water just to wash the thing off so it can live on the kitchen bench, and just sort of speeds up the process. So not a lot of water. That's cool. Thank you very much, Peter.
Okay.
And yeah, basically, I do this most nights while my wife is cooking, and I have to do it, in time to throw it in to the dinner, and then I'm, off the hook. So long as there's enough left in the morning for her to have a smoothie, I've done a good job, But really, it's this sort of steeping that has to happen in the water with the coconut's own enzymes that draws it out. And the bag just makes it a little bit easier. And you can infuse it with with turmeric and do any number of things while you're actually squeezing it.
So what's the fabric?
Well, as far as I know, it's just curtain shear. Yeah. Well, most of the sprouting bags that you buy won't be strong enough, but this is just a little bit tougher, so you can really squeeze it. And it's just designed pointy, so you can actually milk it, and you can just put it straight in if you have chooks or what have you, or we just put it straight in our compost like that, and then just rinse the bag, hang it up to dry. We only hand washing it between uses, and it doesn't get smelly, whereas a hemp one would. So I'll just, if I knew we were going to have dinner first, I would have done this. But yeah, we can sample that, in a wine glass later, or what have you. But it really is. Well, what we'll see happen is it will separate. It'll stratify out to be cream on top of the water. And if you're using a really old coconut, of course you'll get a very thick cream on top. That'll, you leave it in the fridge, it will solidify. And it's nice, but you end up not using the water. But if the coconut's just a little bit younger, still got some light colour in it, it won't solidify. You can just put it in the fridge and just stir it up, and it remains milk for 3 or 4 days. And it's delightful. No, the Kofa is like an oil derivative from copra. So copra is when you've got your mature coconuts cracked in half, water spilt in the garden, and sun dried or dried in smokers, and they just scoop all the kernel out and load it up until the ship comes and takes it. And that's really the traditional coconut industry was based on waiting for transport to come and get bags and bags of copra, and then it was industrially milled, and quite often badly milled. And the copra grade coconut oil is okay for cooking in, but it's it's not going to ward off dementia. It's not it doesn't have the living elements in the full spectrum that are like a fresh coconut. Well, with this milk that I just made, I do this on a large scale at home, probably 100 coconuts at a time, and I'll put that milk into a fermenter, and basically after about 24 hours I've got a beautiful clear virgin coconut oil just under a layer of coagulated protein that I take off. And that's pretty much the highest grade oil that you could buy, what's on the market now. It goes through the skin much better if it doesn't experience any more heat than fermented at 40 degrees.
That oil is saturated oil. Is it dangerous to the cholesterol at all?
No, it's 92% saturated fat, and basically it's short, medium chain saturated fats and a couple of caprylic and capric acid that are short chains. There's very few long chains. If you buy coconut oil as a spray-on cooking product, it's that product's made by taking out the few long chain fatty acids that are in it, so that it stays liquid and sprayable. But it's of absolutely no risk to your heart. It'll eventually be in the medical curriculum. It's the cholesterol debate is changing very quickly, and there's an awful lot of literature about it. And that's also part of the way that we've been, brainwashed into how much death do you want and how much life do you want, Well, it'd be tastier if you didn't squeeze the oil out of it first, but that residue can be used as animal feed, or dried as a coconut flour. There's still enough oil content for baking, but you'd make it fresh if you were going to desiccate it. No. Yeah, the flour is the end product. Just show you one other tool that I think is something that's it's got cultural significance. For a long time, Americans have been diving in the Pacific, and islanders have been stealing their dive knives and doing this to them. And they call it the universal coconut knife. It has a wedge on the back like that, and when you go into the half shell like that, you can just go around and just keep turning it like peeling an apple. It will just all come out like that. My friend, he makes little strips like this, and then he deep fries them in coconut oil, and it's but it's they're simple round tools for round things. Anyway, I don't think that's going to be too much joy after the beautiful meal that we've had, but it's a snack to pass around. Now,
So what is the yearly production cycle of the coconut?
well, if I show you on here, these see how these fronds are slightly offset like that. There's classically is the idea of the stairway to heaven. It really is this beautiful geometry which has about 3 years worth of fronds on the palm. And what happens is the harder palm, this is a geometry of the harder palm. It's if you could imagine, that's like the apical bud, and that slowly rotates either clockwise or anti-clockwise, about 5 degrees with every frond. Usually it's a frond a month, but some of them, these accelerator varieties, have up to 16 fronds a month. So it's basically this sort of like solar calendar. As a frond comes off on one side, it rotates probably 5 degrees, and you get a frond coming off on the other side, frond coming off on the other side. that process gives you, I guess, a frond that has to be on the palm for nearly 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, and then you have a flower that comes out of the base of it. So the flowers are just above where the fronds open, and because the palm is screwing like that into the sky, the bunch comes out directly behind it. The frond will move, and then the bunch will be thrown off the back of it. So to sort of explain how that works, I've got this is what comes out of the base of the frond. That's your inflorescence that comes out of the frond, and I train it down and cut the end off it, and basically twice a day drip this beautiful sugar sap. Not through my socks, but through. So basically that's the beginning. Then that comes out every month, opens, pollinates. Then you have all these different stages that are offset around the palm. So basically you've got 12 months worth of crop and 2 years worth of fronds beginning to push flowers. So it's a continuous cycle with all the whole crop can be on the tree at any given time, and you can still go up there and collect the pure sugar sap, which is what they ferment to make your coconut wine and vodka. And you can more or less still stop that process and let this open as a normal flower and grow coconuts, and it will make the palm more productive.
So where does the flower, you haven't locked the end off to take the flower off there?
Yeah, this is the flower, and we'll open it and I'll show you what's inside. So that's the inflorescence, or they call it the spadix. What I do is I go up morning and night. See, I've tied it. I've drawn it down from the palm, and I've tied it so it can't open naturally. And then I just trim a little bit off the end, like that. And that just starts it flowing again. Now, just morning and night. I spilled a little bit in the car, but basically you can get about a gallon a day, they say in the Philippines. There are some palms, the hybrid varieties that a friend of mine in India produces, that are capable of yielding 6 litres of this sugar sap a day. Yeah, so this came out. Yeah, this is boiled down to coconut sugar, or fermented into wine, or distilled into vodka. So we've got some coconut sugar back there on the tea and coffee table. This is the frond that it came out of. So that frond was pointing at the sun all day in my backyard today. So this is like the day's takings. And I'll just show you. Yeah, that's don't see my my sugar toy, but this is oops, didn't do that very well. Now this isn't the sugar you're accustomed to. This is a full spectrum of B vitamins, vitamin C. I think there's 18 amino acids. There's it's about 18% sugar. So I mean, so you can have the experience if you want to, drop a bit in your mouth without touching the eyedropper. It's the only way I've got to share it. But it's dessert, and it's something that not everybody has ever tasted fresh. But if you have it fresh, it's no. Eventually, that's turned into this arrack, coconut arrack, which is 40% coconut vodka. Yeah, you can start on that one. You can taste it at least. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's gorgeous stuff, and it's so basically, there's a whole full range of minerals. There's vitamin C off the charts. They say 270 times your percent of your daily requirement of vitamin C. All the B vitamins, and I think 8 essential and 8 non-essential amino acids. So if I drink that cup in the morning, I run for hours without a sugar crash. Yes?
Coconut is supposed to be a complete food, like if you were starving, and
Yeah.
when you have coconut, you stay very healthy because it's a complete food.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. But I mean, we're spoilt for choice, and we've got, I think, so many coconut products on the market that don't really, behave like complete foods anymore. Coconuts become, like a health meme, and you can't really entirely trust what you're buying, and that's the unfortunate thing. So.
how do we find genuine products to buy? How do we find genuine products to buy if there's so much?
Well, really, researching the company of the brand of coconut oil you're buying and seeing what their processes are. In the Philippines, it's largely this fermented, naturally fermented coconut milk that they make oil from. In, I guess, the Pacific, a lot of it's a dry coconut oil process, where they warm up the gratings first and then they mechanically press it, and that's probably a good brand that you'll buy, called Melrose is one of their big customers. But these are cottage industry companies by the sort of the scale of things. You've got more and more oil that's they're centrifuge separated coconut oil. Comes from younger and younger coconuts, and basically you've got to taste a lot of them. Don't buy the cheapest. If you put coconut oil in your mouth and it makes you catch in the back of the throat, it's got some level of rancidity in it, and it's really just becoming familiar with one that you like and trust. A lot of the I guess the oils that have been heavily processed, they won't be absorbed through the skin nearly as well, as a handmade one or a smaller processor. And I think there's about, I'd say, I read there was 20 million tons of cottage industry grade virgin coconut oil on the market, and 600 million tons of copra grade oil, and it's all starting to just stand next to the good ones, and they're all being sold as the same. Unfortunately, in Europe, they sell a lot of what they call deodorized coconut oil because they don't want to have any residual coconut flavor in their baked goods. And that's just a clever disguise for selling a low-grade oil and pretending that it's, well, you wanted it deodorized. We didn't tell you what we were deodorizing. So, same thing with the coconut water. And anyway, it's Yeah, no, it doesn't have to live in the fridge. It's, you know, in our climate, on the tablelands anyway, it's solid this time of year. And basically, if you've bought coconut oil and you see it liquefying around 22, 24 degrees, that's good. If you see one that's liquid all the time, even at cold temperatures, that's heavily processed. You know, if you buy one from the butcher's supply shop, you know, they're wanting to use it, but they're selling, you know, a very cheap coconut oil for use in you know, fry safe or frying oil. These are all masks for lower grade coconut oil. So it's
Can you just say that again? So if it solidifies, it's
well.
good grade.
Well, normally coconut oil will go solid from about, say, 22 to 24 degrees. If say anywhere from 22 to 24. What do you reckon? Yeah, it's just you know, a great image. I hope it's on film. Yes, so what's really happening, like the reason the coconut won't grow between 20 degrees or below 20 degrees is it can't metabolize its own oil to feed itself. So a heavily industrial processed copper grade oil that still remains liquid at cold temperatures is without. They've certainly removed some of the longer chain fatty acids from overfiltration or some kind of refining or bleaching process. And so in the tropics you might not know, they're all liquid on the shelf. But if you take it home and put it next to another one, you go, this one's not solidifying it, you know, where it should. You know it's not what it should be. If you're recommending it to people who've had health problems or, you know, who are, you know, using, you know, the best advice to sort of turn their health around, you really want to be able to know that you're helping and not just, you know, be an army for the company.
Yeah, I have one question. I don't mind taking it liquid, but mine is solidifying. I don't like chewing. You want to play out with that?
Yeah. I guess it's, we use it solid, spoon it out of the jar. A lot of people, and we put a teaspoon in our mouths and want to do this oil pulling. So now they're selling special coconut oil with you know, wintergreen or some kind of toothpaste fragrances as a dental product for oil pulling, and it's a fantastic thing. You'll reclaim your mouth. It'll expose all your bad dental work, and eventually, you know, you'll renovate your teeth. Yeah, some people can't just put saturated fat in their mouth. It's not quite right. Just warm it up first. You know, put the jar in a saucepan of hot water, and it will, you know, stay liquid for some time. No, I mean that's what it does, and that's why coconuts struggle down in Brisbane. You know, people say, when will it fruit? And I'd say, depends how cold the winter is and how much you punish it, but it will adapt and do the best that it can. But we have people that are, you know, they're irrigating seedlings out of the kettle with warm water. You know, they're heat mats. There are people, Daly's nursery in Kyogle, you know, buy about 300 coconut seedlings a year. They have all heated beds, and they warm them up through the winter, and then they get them up to this high and sell them in 45-litre bags. And it's, you know, really it's very popular down there to plant a dwarf coconut. And if I don't give all the information, it will just use up its 2 years worth of resources. It might stretch them to 2.5 because of the slow metabolism, but then it will die. And plenty of palm traders have relied on that, but I'd rather that it works. I'd like, people to have this, this thing available in their backyards. So, what's that? Oh yeah, but I mean, honestly, I send seedlings to to Melbourne, to people that are doing hydroponic things indoors. They're growing bananas and all manner of tropical fruits.
So Paul, where can we buy the dwarf ones? Do you sell
Well,
them?
yeah, I grow a lot of them, and I've been selling them for years. Another fellow up in Port Douglas has been doing it ever since Don Burke came up and filmed him. He's a,
Is that
Fine.
the coconut plantation, the old coconut plantation, before you get to Cocotap?
Oh, no, that's a whole other story. Thanks for bringing that up. That's Rob Prettyjohn's protest against the Mossman sugarcane mill. So I don't know if I can say it publicly, but I'm going to. Anyway, they wanted him to clear more land for sugarcane, and he said, no, I'm a bird watcher at heart, and I'm going to keep all that scrub down by the beach there. And by the way, I'm going to plant that other sugar crop and get your bloody cane infrastructure off my land. And so him and his dad planted that property at Palm Cove as well. And they planted mostly with coconut from Cape Trib, but they bonsai'd them by the way that they planted them, and they actually have some quite good traits. So Thala Beach Plantation, it's not a commercial plantation, but it was basically a protest against the sugar mill, and we'd love to make sugar there. It's one of the few places where you could really do it easily. Now this whole culture of taking this sap out, I've been doing it for about the last week and a half, but I could very well keep going. I'm hooked. I can start on the next flower on the tree, but really you can also just let those dry out normally. That pollen is still viable. The few female flowers on there will still yield, it's still capable of having 6 or 8 coconuts on that bunch and feeding the birds and bees. Oh, no, this is, had it remained attached. Yeah. Had I not, been obliged to come in here and show off. Yeah. But anyway, now, there's a lot of things that are, that I guess I probably treat them quite gently. I'm lowering everything on a rope and making sure it doesn't get scratched, because I know it's easier to sell, but I mean, coconuts are pretty rough handled in a lot of parts of the world, and I mean, they have they would say, oh, the flavour only lasts for about 3 days, but once you see the supply chain, you understand why they've all been passed into trucks and stacked on market floors and rolled around and treated horribly, and I just don't have to do that. I'm spoilt by having access to the whole crop. But in the Philippines, there is a whole host of recipes for making tea from these male flowers, pulverizing up this pollen. They treat autistic kids and kids with any emotional disturbances are treated with these male flowers. And there are products that are arriving here slowly, but they're traditional products that Filipinos will say, we always did that as a kid. We knew how to collect the roots off these seedlings, we wouldn't let them dry out. We chop those up and pulverize those and use those as medicine. So there's no part of it that hasn't been welcome and exploited, and it's sort of really just been handed back to the Western markets just in very recent history, and it's a very drastic change, and the industry is not keeping up, and we will have to address it differently if we want it to be a future.
The lies that are coming. Debunk the lies of Canada oil.
Well, yeah.
That's what's trying to
Oh, yeah. The Canada oil. They're actually trying to make a canola oil that has a lauric acid concentration the same as coconut and palm oil, because they know that that's the antimicrobial property and that's what sells. So they think they can engineer it. And I'm just going to say before I open that, there's a fellow I work with in India who's trying to develop a pencil sharpener, an automatic device that just rotates and shaves the end of it and draws it down in rigid plumbing to a receptacle at the bottom of the tree, and it's no longer something that has to be climbed every day, twice a day. It's something that can just be milked for 6 litres of sugar into a, something that just runs parallel with your irrigation, fertigation. There'll be sugar out.
You do that on the tree, but
Yeah.
not have it off the
No, yeah. Interesting you should ask. So climbing, I've never really been able to do the thing with spikes. I've just started free climbing, and now I use this thing, which is, they call it, climbing frame. So this is now what they use in Hawaii or free climbing, because their spike damage is so much worse than what we have here. But really, this is very strong braided steel bands inside that, and I go up the tree on my arms, and probably can even do that, and lift that with my feet. And it's safe, it's easy, it won't break,
So you do the bottom one up with your
Yeah, I lift that up with my feet, and I can go around any side. It's a bit tricky when the palms are out like that, because you can't really adjust the bottom one, but you adjust the top one to suit. And you get up there, and sometimes I just run up a ladder and just stand on this one and tie my ropes around this. By knowing the symmetry of the crown, I know which are the marketable bunches, and I just tie a rope on them and use the sort of natural staircase as a pulley system to lower them. My girlfriend unties them and clips the little stalks off, and we send them to Brisbane. I sent a box to Brisbane that ended up in Adelaide. Like 4 days after it was picked, it was in Adelaide, and they're hankering for it this time of year when it warms up. Yeah, you actually you lower the whole lot, and it's you need to be able to get out of the way, and cut something that weighs more than you, and now these are all, that's probably the 7th or 8th month old bunch. There'd be one bunch that I picked that was younger than that, which I think is probably this one. The jelly would have just formed in that, and it's probably even pinker still. Some of them are just beautiful pink right through the husk, but these are very good breeding. I'd admonish you to take them home or drink them in the car. Some of them are got relatively high sugar content, and it's a very high in the chloride ion, and the mineral profile of it is completely compatible with blood plasma. So just while I'm thinking of it, so there's always this talk about having infusions.
Well, what were they doing when there was a blockade in New Guinea, and they were actually making fuel out of coconuts to fuel the vehicles? How did they do that?
Yeah, well, that's during the war in Bougainville, it was madness for 9 years, and a lot of the guys that were trained by the copper mine, they basically made coconut oil through this method with a flat scraper. Made their coconut oil by cooking it in bathtubs, and they run with 5 litres of coconut oil, get a vehicle started, and and shoot across the battlefield. You know, what happened up there was some of the most resourceful things that have ever happened on the planet. Because these guys had incredible, they were making their weapons, making guns. They were travelling by dugouts and little fast speedboats on coconut oil, off the coast of the Solomons, picking up torpedoes off the bottom, taking them back to Bougainville and making their own munitions. Yeah? Our Navy had to go out and ask the fishermen where all these munitions were, so so that we couldn't be threatened by them. It was really remarkable stories, and a lot of the people who went through that are living in Cairns. It's still ripe and it's still incredibly painful. Had to, yeah. Yeah, the one story I heard was that after the conflict broke out, a man named Sam took a lot of women up into the hinterland and with children, and these women stopped being able to breastfeed. So he ended up going overland to try and get baby formula from... I don't know the town that he emerged at, but he emerged in town and to purchase formula to take back, and basically that perception was that there was a third party in the conflict. You had the PNG forces, the rebels, and then you had this third faction that were coming out of the bush and not going to jail. What's going on there? Or people being released from jail. And so they were living up in the hills and stealing weapons from the soldiers that went up into, raiding the camps. And I mean, it was, let's not go there. It's too late. Beg your pardon? I have to, yeah. I mean, this is basically what all babies are weaned onto. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I just show you this. This is one of my other coconut tools. I put this on and wash my eyes with coconut water, and it really is. It's like clearing the windscreen. It's beautiful, and the sugars in this feed your eye and clear it. It actually... Yeah, it does. Yeah, I read it in this Indian book that they use the coconut water to prevent wrinkles. But yeah, I just put it on, leave it for 10 minutes. It's completely neutral. There's no stinging or anything. And the ants will come for you if you fall asleep. But it's a nice thing to do. I'm not going to do it now. But yeah, you can walk around the house and still more or less see through it. You can see through it, and I don't really want to, live with glasses. I have to read, but I just try to read in the middle of the day. It's better. Look, basically, that's... I don't know if anybody's got a glass or a way of trying that, but... maybe we'll put this back by the tea and coffee, and we can... my friend? Yes, maybe that can go back with the coconut sugar on the tea and coffee table. No, that's he's yeah, no. Look, the other way of climbing the palm that I want to discuss is these are the new spikes that have been manufactured in Cairns, and there's a booklet on that if anyone wants to have a read through. But this fellow's been doing the palms in Cairns. We started 30 years ago, and now he does Mackay, Townsville, and basically it's mandatory now in Mackay to use these what are called Hearst irons. So Hearst Cutler has been developing this for 25 years. He sold it to the American Special Forces, and 20 years later he got his patent back because they never commercialised it. So now these have been engineered in Cairns by this PDA CNC workshop. It's all aircraft grade. It's very high end titanium shank. And once your boot's in there and you're standing on the palm, like jabbing two nails in, all your leg movements aren't transferred into the hole. So basically he's got some pictures in here of palms that he's been doing for 25 years that have just lizard scratches on them. And by comparison, it's just finally this has come about, that there is a way of doing it. And it's spiking palms that aren't going to be removed has been off limits for some time, but nobody's been willing to accept a contract based on spikeless climbing because they cost more, or whether it's cherry pickers or rope techniques. So now that this is available and starting to be sold overseas, it really does make the case for replanting some of the palms that are hideously pockmarked and damaged. So it's not a difficult thing to move an established palm. A lot of Palm Cove was made that way. They were put in the ground as 10-metre tall palms. So there's a legitimate market for selling coconut palms by the metres of trunk. I'll source them for another guy. I haven't got my nurseries just seedlings, but there's another legacy of Rob Prettyjohn is his father's planting at Palm Cove, just by the highway there. They're all 30-year-old palms that are 10, 12 metres tall that have never ever been climbed within half a kilometre of the beach at Palm Cove. And it's a legitimate thing to think about when tourists who actually understand this crop, because they're coming from India or China, which is one of the largest markets for coconut. Certainly direct flights to the Philippines, we will embarrass ourselves by not showing that we understand the tree of life. We're a tropical destination, and this underwrites the tropics, and we've allowed our underwriters to condemn it almost to extinction.
There are some councils where they like to come down.
Well, the risk is it's reprehensible, really, that a good coconut management policy was drawn up by the arborist for this council, but the council was unwilling to adopt it. Peter Taylor's coconut management plan went to the Douglas Shire. We'll use that. They didn't.
They should be here tonight listening to you because she wants to get rid of them.
Well, no, she got elected as the saviour of the coconuts, but I don't think she's really any friend of them. She's a friend of this fella up at Cape Trib who would like to see all the palms north of the Daintree River as earmarked, don't belong here. And, we really are tired of dredging up the academic debate about whether coconuts belong or not. We've got so much botanical evidence to show that they've always been here. We've fought this right through. Yeah, we know it's official, and we still hear, some kind of lunacy trying to spin public perception. And they made a big mistake in Port Douglas by using this 150 people a year get killed by coconut statistic that they, pulled off the internet. And, it was really fun to challenge them on that. And it was an ignoble, prize that this got for research that was ridiculous and shouldn't be repeated. And his original research, based on, I think, 4 people that had coconut injuries, was extrapolated into 150 people a year, more than sharks, more than crocodiles. It was fed by Shark Week every year. Shark Week on the Discovery Channel kept fueling the danger of coconuts, and so they kind of fell on their sword a bit by portraying that as the truth and trying to get people to sign up to look after their own palms so we don't have to. And as it turns out, the actual original statistics that were extrapolated into this whole insurance scam or overestimation of the risk was based on monkeys who were trained to pick coconuts on the end of ropes, getting tired after twisting them off, not lowering them down on ropes, and throwing them at their handlers. And I thought, really, 3 out of the 4 coconut deaths were caused by cranky monkeys on the end of the rope. And I thought, it was really, but now, of course, it's the truth,
But the Falkland Islands, south of Cairns.
The Franklin Islands, yeah.
Franklin, sorry.
Yeah.
Not Falkland, Franklin.
Yeah, no.
The Franklin Islands, when I was there last, the National Parks and Wildlife Service made it their duty to rip them all out. Coconuts would normally wash up on the beach and they were beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it their life duty to pull them up because they said they were feral.
Yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful thing that happened.
They were saying.
The guy that was paid to do that, to cut them all down in 2001, photographed them before, measured each one, lined up all the fruit, cut a section of all the fruit. We sent Mike Fole, my coconut mentor in UQ, all this botanical evidence. And, they made the case for these palms having a single botanical ancestor because the fruit colour was not, a dominant colour. There was a green fruit. They were all the same. They were a population that arrived through the Flora Passage, were drawn in a sketchbook in 1802 and then again in 1848. And it was like, oh, you chopped them all down. Well, I'm sure you'll put them all back soon, or somebody will, because that's a natural grove of coconuts that wasn't eaten by indigenous people because it was a little bit further to get to. There weren't many rats there. But I tell you, it was one of the great mistakes, that the national parks or marine parks have made. Oh yeah, they tried it once more. More recent history in Forbes Island. Off the coast of Chile Beach. They said, this is a feral hippie garden, overgrown. We'll go in there and we'll just cut all these palms off with a chainsaw at waist height and burn the hillside and go back to wherever they came from in their boats. And a cruise ship came around the corner from Darwin, and I think it's a paleontologist and another academic, husband and wife, were travelling on that boat, and they photographed it, saw all these reptiles that were burned from an irresponsible fire, wrote to the herbarium and more or less really stuck a charge under them. And those are the type of things that have been happening in the background that frighten councils from removing a coconut publicly. They know that there's a groundswell of protecting the icon of the tropics, whether it's understood or misunderstood, loved or hated. It's still become too controversial, and rightly so. But it needs to be out there. It needs to be known that
the real information needs to come out.
Yeah. Well, what I learned from Franklin Islands a long time ago when I lived up near Cooktown was everything from Green Island to Fitzroy Island, that gets caught on one of those little underwater cameras, all washes up at Archer Point. So my campaign, with tidal data, is to show that all these natural coconuts that were inshore, carried along this longshore current, were the ones that were found by Joseph Banks. Thank you. On the shores in Cooktown. He assumed, Terra nullis, nobody's been here but us. We didn't see any coming up the coast whilst we were way out on the outer reef, afraid of running aground. We didn't go into the Franklin Islands, but certainly anyone that surveyed that coast, 1802 was the first indication that there were green coconuts and bamboo in Cleveland Bay in Townsville, and little gunyahs, and it was Philip Parker King's whole account of our coast is just fringe.
As the islanders, they all ate coconut, and look how healthy they were.
Yeah.
Not like today.
Yeah, I mean, health is, it often comes to people that have very little because they're willing to go and get it. And it's, I haven't really sort of expressed what happens with the sugar and the quality of the sugars. I was speaking to Diana about the other day. The molecules of sugar that's in the coconut water, it starts off as what they call invert disaccharides, or glucose is a monosaccharide, sucrose is a disaccharide. What you get in the coconut water is invert disaccharides joining together in chains. So the sugar becomes this complex oligosaccharide branching, and it's actually, so there you go, a few probiotics, and I already got a bit of wind from it. Anyway, the sugars are actually growing, assembling just as the palm assembles itself in little spirals. So inside this water, there's no cell walls. The cell wall is the actual shell itself initially, and this naked cell nuclei, 3 sets of chromosomes, and these sugars growing in this kind of quite beautiful formation is very fragile. There's nothing holding it together except electric or electromagnetic forces. I can stick a multimeter in the coconut and show you the millivolts between the different lines on the shell. So this battery, unless it's handled very gently, breaks up into very simple sugars, and that's what happens when you get something that's dehusked in Thailand, dipped in bleach or metabisulfite to stay white, shrink wrap sometimes, shipping container. They only have a 5-week shelf life in Thailand in the fridge, but in Australia they have a 3-month shelf life somehow, just by the virtue of one guy who tried selling it to Woolies in the 80s. Now that they're back and very popular, what you have is this sugar breaking up in the cold. 2 months at 2 degrees, and you're left with monosaccharides. And so you drink it and you go, this is such a sweet variety. It's like, well, no, if it was that sweet to begin with, you'd be really impressed. It gets sweeter as it dies. Same as sugarcane, same as anything that we reduce or overly process. So a lot of these sugars are sophisticated molecules. Almost, I think there's one in the sugar sap that's called inositol, which is given as medicinally now, synthetic inositol. It's like a vitamin-like structure, but it's basically derived from a sugar. And these are sugars that come directly from a solar panel through the flower, and you can consume it. This is a very short pathway of what nature intended, and you feel it instantly. There's no sugar crashing because you've fed your whole gut microbiome on processed simple sugars, and you're not exhausted by the action of saturating yourself or your blood with that sugar. I think I've probably just about run out of stuff. I'm glad I got through what I did. Thank you very much.
I can honestly say that Paul is coconuts. What else can I say about this? And he's talking about appreciation.
Oh, true.
Would like to do a gift that you can open one.
Thank you very much.
Now, what I need to ask you is, if anybody, and I'm sure the others would be interested in more answers to more questions, can we get
Yeah, it's all. That's the website is just cocotap.com, and I conduct the nursery through that, just by email. Yeah, TAP. Yeah, long before I learned how to tap the tree, really. But yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to give you a hand. Yeah.
Thank you very much.